Soinai, Hecharim, Me'ayin Yavo Ezri, Soinai, Hecharim, Me'ayin Yavo Ezri, Ezri, Me'im Adonai, Osei, Shemayim v'aretz, Ezri, Me'im Adonai, Osei, Shemayim v'aretz. I lift my eyes to the mountains, and what is the source of my help? My help comes from Adonai, the maker of heaven and earth. God will not let your foot give way, your protector will not slumber. See, the protector of Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. God is your guardian, and God is your protection at your right hand. The sun will not strike you by day, nor the moon by night. God will guard you from all harm. You're going and you're coming now and forever. Amen. 92 years. It's remarkable. Remarkable in its longitude and remarkable also in its depth. How Don filled those years. He filled them with accomplishment in his profession, in his family, in his community, in his art. He filled them with love and relationship. You helped him fill them. And so today and every day forward, we fill this room and each other's hearts with his memory, drawing lessons from his life, making sure that those 92 years have a deep and long and lasting impact, not only on us, but on generations to come, that we tell of his story, we teach his lessons, we share his humor and his insight, we teach his Torah, the Torah of his life. As I shared with the family, our tradition teaches in this context of life eternal in Judaism, we live on through memory and blessing. We say when we hear of a death of a loved one, we say, may their memory be a blessing. And the way we do that best is by remembering them for blessing, by sharing stories, by drawing lessons. And so we have something very real that we need to do today, and that is to discern from the stories the family will share, from the things that we will hear and the memories that those stories will evoke, to discern something, if not more than one thing from Don's life that we can take into our own, that we can carry on, that can be the mitzvahs that he can no longer do, that we will do on his behalf. Our tradition teaches us to turn to the Psalms, the Tehillim, to find in King David's ancient poetry and words of comfort and consolation for our present circumstance, to think of how something written 2,500, 3,000 years ago can still speak with poignancy and insight for our own present day, reminds us that we're not alone, we're not the first to walk in the valley of the shadow of death. Others have walked before David indeed, and we can find strength, perhaps wisdom maybe, from the words that he has shared. I wanted to share just one or two Psalms with you this morning. In Psalm 15, David asks the question, he wonders who gets to live on in eternity, who at the end of their life merits the reward of living on in heaven. He asks, Adonai mi yagur bo'chalecha mi yishkan b'char kodshecha. God, who may abide in your house, who may dwell on your holy mountain. And then he answers that question with this list. And I thought of it as we were talking about Dawn yesterday, or the day before, whenever it was. I thought about it as you described him. This is how David describes such a person. Those who are upright, who do justly, who speak the truth within their hearts, who do not slander others or wrong them or bring shame upon them, who scorn the lawless, but honor those who revere God, who give their word and come what may, do not retract it, who do not exploit others, who do not take bribes. Those who live in this way shall never be shaken, shall dwell on God's holy mountain. Another psalm, a familiar one to many, is Psalm 23. And if you'll turn in your handout, if you took it as you came in, you'll find the words on the inside, top left corner of the page. Let's read together. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Amen. Kol zman ve'et l'kol chefetz tachat hashamayim, to everything there is a season, a time for every experience under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to uproot what is planted, a time to tear down and a time to build up, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to grieve and a time to dance, a time to throw stones and a time to gather stones, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to seek and a time to lose, a time to keep, a time to discard, a time to tear and a time to sow, a time to keep silent and a time to speak. And so let's speak. Let's speak of Don and his life and all that it meant to us and all that we learned from it. I learned something I had not known in 6 years of being his rabbi. Don Hendin was a magician. Did you know that? I mean that literally and I mean that figuratively. And all that Don did in his life and all that he had achieved as a pioneering cardiac radiologist, as a husband, as a father, an artist, a Jewish community leader, perhaps his greatest achievement was as a Zeta. Don didn't want to be a boring Zeta, and so he learned to be a magician, the great Hendini. And he would go to Vegas to learn the classic tricks to do them for his grandchildren. If there is one image that I hope we will hold on to of Don this morning as we remember him through his children and his grandchildren's stories for blessing, I hope that it is of the great Hendini, with his hat and his wand, doing magic tricks like the rope with the knot in it, the scarves up on your sleeve, the solid rings that he could join together miraculously. Picture Don as the great Hendini in his living room for a moment in your mind's eye. That smile that just crossed your face right now, that is how we need to remember him. Don lived 92 years. They were not always easy. He grew up without a lot of means in Winnipeg. He was one of only two in his family to go to university. He worked long hours, caring for his patients, teaching his students. But at the end of the day, he, as the great Hendini, he was father who would build a shed and a basketball pad for his boys. So on those precious occasions when work was done and the snow was shoveled, they could shoot hoops or shoot pucks in their yard. He was Gloria's soulmate, your beshert of 67 years, Gloria. So magical was your marriage that when Don proposed, he never actually asked you the question. It just kind of happened over the phone. It just came naturally to them, like so many things in your marriage. Don and Gloria were always on the same page. Never had to learn how to be with each other. They just were for each other. And Don was truly a magician. He was magical in so many ways, a fastidious perfectionist in his medical work and later in his artistry and his sculpture. He valued competence in others. You had to know what you were doing if you were going to take responsibility for doing something, and then do it right, do it competently. Don was honest and caring. He had a generosity of spirit. He was mindful before mindfulness was trending, and he was present. People would tell his children how generous he was, how appreciative he was. He treated people, everybody really, his caregivers in particular, like human beings. He said thank you to every single caregiver that ever did anything for him or to him. But at the end of the day and every day, after 92 years of living and loving and caring and giving, I hope and I pray that we will remember him perhaps as he wanted to be remembered most. The kind of man, the Zeta, who would study every year to learn new magic tricks to impress his grandchildren so that they would never think him boring. That's the depth of Don's love for his family, his respect and appreciation for people. That's the great lengths that Don would go to and the attention to detail that he would put into all that he did to make sure that whatever challenge he took on, he did it right and to the very best of his capability. Don was indeed magical. May his memory be a blessing. Howie and Sophie are going to come up to share some memories of their dad and grandfather, too.
Sophie wants me to let you all know that she loved her Zeta. She's going to miss her Zeta. And she has lots of fond memories of her Zeta. Okay. So if I cry during my talk here, it shouldn't belie my joy at having had Dad for a father, and also the joy that he is no longer suffering. And that's real joy. I'll start off with a serendipitous moment last night. Dad hated flies. You didn't want to be a fly around Dad, or you were dead as soon as he could manage it, and he managed it with fervor and intensity and professionalism. So last night, it's 11:05, thereabouts. There was a fly in my place. I cornered it in the bathroom. It took me probably 6 or 7 minutes to kill it, and I thought about Dad. I walked out the door to walk my dog about a minute later, and I got stung by a wasp. So that's nature's way of taking care of me. I'd like to thank Peter Lutsky for his care for Dad, his love, good humor, for his care for Mom, for being there last Tuesday night when Dad took ill with a fever, for being there on Friday after Dad passed to comfort me and Mom, and provide some humor and levity. Thank you so much, Peter. I'd like to thank David Book for his treatment of Dad over the years. Dad didn't like strangers around him, and David was Dad's dentist. So as Dad started to decline, the fact that David was his dentist was a real gift. David's uncle was a dear friend of Dad's, and that was a connection that was very important to Dad. So thank you very much, David Book. A dear person. All the people at Louis Briar were wonderful, and those are the angels that exist on this earth, the people that deal with people who are in decline on a daily basis. Truly wonderful. I spent a night at Dad's this past week on Tuesday night or Wednesday night, I can't remember. And on a regular basis, as the night went, I didn't sleep too much, and the caregivers were there to check on Dad. Didn't do something that I didn't want them to do to make him uncomfortable. We're totally caring and loving. It was the best place for him to be in his condition and to leave this world. Thank you to Christina from Louis Briar for being there for Mom on Friday before I could arrive, and for comforting me and Mom in that moment. In the year before Dad went to Louis Briar 2 years ago, he spent about a year going to a place called Crossreach, which is a place for seniors and people that are in decline. The people at Crossreach were also angels, wonderful people, and quite spectacular. Thank you to Crossreach and places like that. Mom, you tolerate my ridicule, my joking, my ways. You have been a tower of strength. You are Dad's love, the matriarch, his partner in life. You're a wonderful mother. You're strong beyond belief. And we're going to enjoy the next years thinking about Dad and talking about Dad. Your devotion to him and his time at Louis Briar, your devotion to him and keeping him home longer than he should have out of pure love is a thing that we all should be happy to have in our lives. I love you, Mom. Dad was 92 years old. As the rabbi said, 67 years married. He was beloved by his wife, loved by his sons and daughters-in-law, adored by his grandchildren, 6 grandchildren, and Dad was a valued and loved friend. I'm going to read an email that Nathan Atnikov sent. Nathan is my cousin Don's son. Here it is. I was sorry to hear about Uncle Donnie today. I will always remember going to him when I wanted to hear stories about the family and always appreciated his perspective. I especially remember him for being a very helpful presence at my Aunt Miriam's funeral, pulling me aside a few times to tell me stories and help me understand and feel better about the whole situation. I'm sorry I won't be able to make it to Vancouver this weekend, but my parents will be there to represent us. I'll be thinking about him and hope to speak to you soon. Dad had a thing about proximity. He was a very ticklish man. Maybe some of you didn't know that. I used to get a lot of delight out of hugging him, getting into his neck, and making him ticklish, and him saying, "Howie!" I'll think of that in the future. He tolerated me doing that a lot. A friend of mine, Cyprian, sent an email upon learning about Dad's death, and I'm going to read part of it. Your father lived a long, eventful, and full life. The last few years were challenging, but also a blessing. His passing is sad, but there is also joy in knowing that his radiant soul is now free of the severe limitations that his frail body were imposing upon him towards the end. I think that encapsulates the situation wonderfully and better than I could have put it, I'm sure. Thanks to everyone who's here today, beloved friends and family, and thank you. Thank you to the rabbi so much for being there for us, for coming over on Saturday and getting our conversation started about Dad and thinking about today. And for being there for Mom and for being there for us in the future. Thanks so much, Rabbi.
Schönen Dank zu alle. Wir seien alle dort zusammen und das ist sehr gut, aber treurig und schwer. Who wants to translate? We're all here together. This is good, although it's also sad and it's hard. I'm Perry. I'm the middle son of a middle son of a middle son. I don't know why that matters, but I've always liked saying it. I wanted to start today in Yiddish because we're here to remember. Remember a person, a life, a soul now lost. This connects me to Yiddish because I have lately become a student of Yiddish and our family's history, largely because of our family's history and heritage, and now one of those links is gone. Dad lived 92 years. This is a long time. It's a long life. A lot happened. This is our few minutes to tell you what we'd want you to hear and to know about Donnie. A few minutes, a moment, right? A blink of an eye, really, in the context of the length and breadth of a life lived. But the fact that you're here with us probably means you already knew him. Each of us here has our own unique memories and perspectives as we interacted with him. We hope you can share with us your personal remembrance and perspective. This will fill in the picture of the whole person for all of us. And that's what Shiva is for. So we look forward to hearing from you and schmoozing with you when you have the time and energy. I want you to know that Don Hendin was a kind and thoughtful person. He grew up in a building called the Renfrew Apartments on the corner of Mountain and Powers in Winnipeg's North End. Middle son of 3 boys, older brother Sid and younger brother Davy. Merv Stone and Morley Chess grew up very nearby. They became lifelong friends. Winnipeg of this time was a cocoon of Jewish cultural life. Socialist and capitalist immigrants arguing at the Shabbos table, community rich in Yiddishkeit, and Jewish institutions and businesses, and almost everyone surrounded by large extended families. The family's apartment was small, but nonetheless frequently had other relatives living there as the family got its footing in their new country in that first generation. He and Morley would trade poor stories, how there were times when one night's dinner was potatoes and the next night was potato soup, which meant the water from cooking the potatoes the night before. After he met Mom and when the family finally got a private phone inside the apartment, he'd pull the phone into the closet to have privacy to talk to her. Despite Winnipeg's winters, Dad didn't grow up playing hockey because he didn't have his own skates. Dad went to McRae Elementary School and then high school at St. John's Tech, which, despite its Catholic name, had a large Jewish presence. School was essentially shut down in Yontif. He played sports and hung out with friends in a club called the Canucks, and at St. John's he was a star on the football team. Interesting, most of the rest of his life he was characterized by not being a big joiner. He didn't play any organized sports after high school. Dad's father, Lou, was a humble, quiet, able person who worked for the CNR Railroad for 48 years as a tinsmith and could fix anything. But he and Dad didn't necessarily share a lot of personal conversation. Still, Dad admired his father's adjustment to a new world and his work ethic. His mother worked most of her life in a dress shop. Mom and Dad met at the University of Manitoba, and Dad loved to repeat the story that he experienced love at first sight on seeing Mom. He didn't use those terms exactly, but we got it. He repeated many times at anniversaries that the first time he saw the perfect features of her beautiful face, that he was confident they'd spend the rest of their lives together. When they got married, Dad found Mom's vibrance, intelligence, and engagement with the world the fulfillment of his dreams. Later in life, when friends and family reflected on nachas from their family, Dad would say, Gloria raised them, she gets the credit. Dad entered the University of Manitoba in chemistry and then graduated in medicine. After residency in radiology, the head of the department wished him good luck in looking for a job somewhere else. They had enough Jews. Over the years, I asked him a few times about that interaction. What did he say to the guy? How do you react to that? He said there wasn't much dialogue. What's the use? He was very direct in his dealings with people, and he could see the end game early and clearly. He got a position on faculty at the University of Alberta, basically Jennemsveld to Mom and Dad at the time, leaving the rich cultural family life of Winnipeg. Professionally, Dad enjoyed a great time of discovery and growth in medicine. The new field of cardiac catheterization was beginning, and with talented and passionate colleagues in cardiology and cardiac surgery, Bob Fraser, John Callahan, Jerry Stern, and others, they were helping patients in ways previously unheard of and teaching students and residents in innovative ways. He created a graphic system to superimpose a color image of the heart on the chest x-ray. He developed a plastic model of the heart when none previously existed by injecting a human cadaver heart with a plasticizing material. a system that later became standard for all human organ models. He helped co-develop one of the great advances in radiology called the C-arm with a bright technologist at the U of A, Ray Hansen. As he became accomplished in his own medical career, I believe he valued being recognized and honored, but he never paraded it. It bolstered in him a characteristic which we saw come to the fore over and over. He was very quick and generous in praise of others and the good and nice things that he saw in the world. He gave credit quickly to others. He complimented people generously. My older brother Michael and I were born in Winnipeg. My younger brother Howard was born in Edmonton. In Edmonton, Dad was very busy at work. He was the consummate physician. He cared a great deal about the quality and integrity of his work and his relationship with his colleagues. He typically brought work home to read x-rays after dinner and frequently moonlighted at weekend jobs for a little more parnassa. Coming from humble, very humble beginnings, he was proud of being a good provider. We enjoyed a middle-class life in a growing Edmonton, a new house, an addition later on. We had a sloped driveway in front, so like the rabbi said, he poured a concrete pad in the back so we could shoot hoops, and he built a shed there to hold the basketball net. When they were more comfortable financially, he even allowed himself a luxury car. He grew up in a family in a time when it was matornished, right? Forbidden to buy German products. But he really wanted a BMW. It was 1973. No one knew yet what BMWs were. They weren't the status symbol for yuppies yet, no offense to anyone. So for about a year, he drove by the BMW dealership. We dropped in to see the car from time to time, and eventually he announced to Mom he bought it. She was incredulous. He explained it was now last year's model, and the dealership had bought it from BMW, so he was not buying directly from the Germans. This made it okay. Human rationalization is a powerful mechanism as we try to balance our ethics and our dreams. After 20 years on faculty at the U of A and simultaneously running a private practice across the street from the hospital at outpatient radiology, Mom and Dad moved to Vancouver. This was an opportunity for them to finally live close to family again. Mom's brother Murray and his wife Shayla and their family, Albert and Ethel Hansen were here in Vancouver then. Cousins Morton, Jackie, Anita, and Dave were all here. Dad worked briefly at the new UBC hospital and then part-time at Workmen's Compensation Board in Vancouver till he finally fully retired in 2000. I had a personal golden moment that lasted a year with Mom and Dad. After my BA, I decided to go back to sciences to try to apply to med school. So even though they had escaped us and Edmonton to go to Vancouver, I moved in with them. Well, I went to UBC. Mom and Dad were Nighthawks then, a lot of their life actually. And after my long days at university, we would often sit up late in the night in the living room. And I found in my father, that time in his life, a great listener. He would listen to my worries about my studies, my worries about the world, in the sincere, real, listening way that's penetrating and too rare, where you sit and you listen without sharing your own experience or opinion, and you remain quiet. And you wait and listen a little more. And when some time has passed where it would be natural or normal to talk, you keep eye contact and you remain quiet a little longer. I'm forever indebted to him for many, many things, but that period of my life especially. In retirement, his keen eye and able hands allowed him to enjoy gardening and pottery and sculpture and photography and a good long nap. When Meryl, Stephanie, and Jill came into the family, Dad felt an unspeakable nachas in what these intelligent, energetic, capable, and connected women brought to his mishpacha. Then retirement brought him a joy in life that I think even he didn't anticipate so much, really beyond words, to be a Zeta to 6 Einiklach. Levi, Ariel, Yona, Lauren, Maya, and Sophie were such a treasure to him. As you heard from the rabbi, he determined early on he didn't want to be a boring Zeta. He learned some magic tricks, bought a crazy hat, transformed himself into the great Hendin, performing his cheesy but adorable magic act. Dad's Yiddishkeit was complicated, as I think it should be for all thinking people. He loved the heritage and compliments of the Jewish people, and especially of our relatives in Israel, but he developed a quite confident atheism, born mostly out of the conviction that the Holocaust was proof there was no greater power over us in the world. Still, he favored Jewish education. My brothers and I all went to Jewish day school, Edmonton's Talmud Torah, and even took a turn as our shul's president in Edmonton. He didn't exercise his native knowledge of Yiddish much, but on his only trip to Israel in 1980, he and Mom came to see me at Hebrew U and to meet Meryl for the first time. He developed this little routine. If we were in an elevator and there's an older European-looking Israeli, he'd say, kind of staring out into no one in particular, "Du redest Yiddish?" Means, do you speak Yiddish? It was this neat technique, right? If no one in the elevator spoke Yiddish, no one responded, no one wanted interactions, no harm done. If someone did understand Yiddish, knew a little schmooze with Landsman. Dad also loved to laugh. I remember him literally falling out of his chair, at least on 2 occasions, laughing. He could repeat the punchline of a joke multiple times after the joke was delivered and keep chuckling each time. So you know this one? Son comes into the den and says to Dad watching TV, "Dad, what's on?" "Dad, basketball." "What's the score?" 86-81. "Who's winning?" 86. Dad died Erev Shabbos, and the parsha we read last week was Bechukotai. This part of the Torah basically says, walk in the ways of the laws of the Torah, and good things will result. Dad did not ascribe to this idea much, but he did have specific ideas of the way things should be done. A man should always carry a hanky. If you have cash in your pocket, the smaller bills should be on the outside, so when you need to pay for something, you won't have to reveal how much money is really in your pocket. You should not touch any of the surfaces in a public bathroom. A carefully orchestrated sequence of events with paper towels and your foot holding the door. Another gig. When Mom and Dad bought fresh blueberries home from the farm market, everybody's ready for this one. He washed each individual blueberry under running water with soap and water. Yes, I really said that right. Each individual blueberry by hand. Whether these were germophobic or just fastidious and obsessive habits has been a debate in our family for a long time. But Dad had good humor that we were amused by his exacting practices. He was smart and direct and kind and thoughtful, and he was a good guy. And he was robbed of his memory by dementia in the last part of his life. This was a trial of unspeakable challenge, and he was lucky beyond description to be the beneficiary of our mother's unwavering support and strength and love. A love that was mutual and deep and full and lasted 66 or 7 years. He was also the lucky recipient of the attention of our brother Howard's unconditional love, a gentle presence, and unlimited help. And of the ever-present and insightful and loving care of a young doctor they knew from diapers, Dr. Peter Lutsky. Where the hell are you? Donnie was kind and strong and handsome and loving.
Thank you for those loving tributes. We're going to conclude our service here in the sanctuary and then head in procession, those that are choosing to join us at graveside for interment. We'll return back here to the temple following the interment for the meal of condolence, and there'll be a Shiva Minyan here at the temple at 2:30 this afternoon. And then tomorrow and Wednesday at 6:30 here at the synagogue as well. You're welcome to come as early as 6 o'clock tomorrow and Wednesday so that the family can be comforted by your presence. I'll ask you now to please rise for El Malei Rachamim. El Malei Rachamim Shochein Bamromim Hamitzeh Menucha Nechona Tachat Kanfecha Shechina Im Keroshim Utechorim Kezocha Harakia Maschirim Et Nishmat Yitzhak Gedalia ben Yehuda Leib Barucho Shechalal Olamo Baal Harachamim Yastirechul B'Seitek Kanafav Olamim Vayitzror Bitzror Chachaim Et Nishmato Adonai hu nachalato v'yanuach b'shalom al mishkavo v'nomar amen. Compassionate God, eternal Spirit of the universe, grant perfect rest in your sheltering presence to Don who has entered eternity. O God of mercy, let him find refuge in your eternal presence in the shadow of your wings. And let his soul be bound up in the bond of everlasting life. God is his inheritance. May he rest in peace. And let us say, Amen. Friends, if you remain standing for a moment, I'd like to invite the active and honorary casket bearers to come stand on both sides of the casket as we proceed through the sanctuary and social hall and down to the coach. Ari Kansan, Yona, Maya, Ariel, Lauren, Sophie, Levi, Earl, Donald, and Barbie.